James had been wrestling with the curse for months. Each full moon brought the same terror, the uncontrollable transformation, the wild chase through the wilderness, and the gnawing fear that he might hurt someone. He could no longer bear the burden of being a werewolf, a creature of the night. Desperate for a solution, he scoured every old legend, every whispered story from the truck stops and gas stations he frequented during his endless drives. One evening, James heard about a mysterious woman living deep in the forest, an ancient healer, or perhaps a witch, depending on who told the story. People said she had powers beyond understanding, and if anyone could lift his curse, it would be her. With no other options left, he decided to seek her out. He followed a series of winding back roads through dense forests, the moon rising ominously in the sky, though not yet full. James gripped the steering wheel of his old Peterbilt 359, his heart heavy with hope and fear. As he approached the small village on the edge of the forest, he noticed how the locals avoided mentioning the woman by name. They referred to her simply as the Old One, and warned him not to go looking for her. But James had no choice. He couldn't live like this anymore. After parking his truck near the edge of the woods, James set off on foot, guided only by vague directions and the fading light of day. The forest was thick, the trees looming over him, casting long, eerie shadows. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made him tense, but he pressed on, determined. After what felt like hours, he found a small, ancient cabin nestled between tall pines. The place exuded an air of timelessness, as if it had been there long before the forest itself. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and the air smelled of herbs and something more, something James couldn't quite place, but that sent a shiver down his spine. He approached the door, hesitant. Before he could knock, the door creaked open, and an old woman stood in the threshold, her eyes sharp and knowing. She was small and hunched, with silver hair that flowed down her back and skin that looked as though it had weathered centuries. "I know why you've come," she said, her voice gravelly but firm. "You seek freedom from the beast within." James felt a chill run through him. He hadn't said a word, but she already knew. The woman beckoned him inside, and he followed her into a dimly lit room filled with jars of strange herbs, dried animal bones, and old books bound in leather. The air was thick with the smell of burning sage, and a low hum seemed to vibrate through the walls. James felt uneasy, but he knew this was his only hope. The woman began to gather ingredients, moving with surprising speed for someone of her age. She mixed herbs, muttered incantations in a language James didn't recognize, and drew strange symbols on the ground with chalk. As she worked, James sat quietly, watching her every move. The weight of the curse felt heavier than ever, and his heart pounded with both hope and dread. Finally, she stood in front of him, holding a small vial of liquid, dark as night. "Drink this," she said, her eyes locking onto his. "But be warned, the curse is old and powerful. The process will not be easy, and there is always a price." James hesitated for a moment, but then reached for the vial. He had come too far to back out now. As he drank the liquid, it was bitter, almost unbearable. The room seemed to spin, and for a moment, everything went dark. When James awoke, he was still in the cabin, but something felt wrong. His skin tingled, and a deep, primal urge stirred within him. He looked at the old woman, who was watching him intently, her face expressionless. Suddenly, the familiar sensation began, the tightening of his muscles, the sharp pain in his bones, the unbearable heat coursing through his veins. It was happening again. His heart raced as the full moon, now high in the sky, beamed through the window. The transformation was starting, and he realized with horror that the potion hadn't worked. If anything, it had made the curse stronger. James fell to his knees, gasping for breath as his body shifted and contorted. The old woman backed away, her eyes wide with fear. "No, this wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered, but it was too late. The beast inside James roared to life. His vision blurred, his mind clouded with instinct. He could feel the hunger rising, and as much as he tried to resist, he couldn't stop it. The transformation was complete, and the wolf had taken over. The old woman, realizing the danger, tried to flee, but James, now fully transformed, was faster. His powerful legs carried him across the room in an instant, and though he fought against the beast inside, the primal force was too strong. The witch's attempts to escape were futile. In the chaos, the moonlight streaming through the window seemed to grow brighter. James could feel the beast reveling in the power of the night, unstoppable and wild. As the old woman's screams faded into the night, the cabin fell silent, save for the rustling of the trees outside. When the morning came, James awoke in the forest, far from the cabin. He was covered in dirt and leaves, disoriented and shaken. His head pounded, and his memories of the night were fragmented and foggy. But one thing was clear: he was still cursed. He had failed to lift the werewolf's burden, and the witch was gone. James stood up, his body sore but intact. He looked toward the rising sun, knowing that his search for a cure was far from over. The road ahead was still long, and with each passing night, the beast within him grew stronger. The journey to rid himself of the curse would continue, but James feared that in the end, the beast might be the only part of him left.